What's up everyone, Piscean here, and in this video, with the help of Claude Anthropic AI, I'm bringing to you origins of advanced astrology across Hindu, Babylonian, Chinese, Arabian, and postmodern tradition. So please like, comment, share, subscribe. We really appreciate you, and I'm here to bring free advanced astrology content to you. So, getting started here, we see that there's origins across 5 civilizations. So long before astrology even became a newsstand curiosity, it was a serious intellectual discipline, part cosmology, part statecraft, part sacred calendar. Priests in Mesopotamia read the sky for omens affecting kings. Brahmin astronomer priests in India mapped the lunar mansions to time rituals and life passages. Court diviners in Han Dynasty China tied the 12-year animal cycle to dynastic fortune. Scholars in the Abbasid Caliphate fused Greek, Persian, and Indian methods into a mathematically rigorous art, and in the last century, astrology was reinvented again as a language of psychology, identity, and popular media. And this report traces that lineage, 5 distinct traditions, one shared human impulse to read meaning into the turning sky. As we see, there is a comparative timeline here with selected milestones across the 5 traditions discussed in this report. Dates for early oral and observational practices are necessarily approximate. So clearly see here, in 1800 BCE, we got the old Babylonian omen text, and 1000 BCE, we got Mu'epin star catalog. 500 BCE, Babylonian zodiac standardized. 140 BCE, Hellenistic Vedic exchange begins. 60 CE, Han Dynasty Shang-Xiao cycle. 150 CE, Yavana Jataka, Indo-Greek text. 450 CE, Aryabhata and Siddhanta astronomy. 800 CE, Abbasid translation movement, Baghdad. 870 CE, Abu Mashar's Great Introduction. 1930 CE, Jungian psychological turn. 1975 CE, sun sign mass media astrology. And in 2020 CE, data-driven and app-based astrology. Okay. So, beginning with Hindu Vedic astrology, Jyotisa, the science of light, the sidereal astrology of the Indian subcontinent. So, Jyotisa, one of the 6 auxiliary later I read that completely wrong. Jyotisa, one of the 6 auxiliary Vedanga disciplines supporting Vedic ritual, grew from the practical need to time sacrifices correctly. Alright. And the earliest surviving astronomical text, the Vedanga Jyotisa, organized the year by lunar mansions, nakshatras, rather than the 12 solar signs familiar in the West. Later, mathematician astronomers, above all Aryabhata and Varahamihara, systematized the discipline in the great Siddhanta treatise, fixing planetary tables, house systems, and the Dasha planetary period predictive method that remains distinctive to Jyotisa today. A decisive transformation arrived with sustained contact along Indo-Greek and Indo-Scythian trade routes after Alexander's campaigns. The Yavana Jataka, sayings of the Greeks, translated and adapted Hellenistic horoscopic astrology, the 12 zodiac signs, planetary rulerships, the ascendant, into Sanskrit verse, grafting Greek technique onto indigenous nakshatra lore. 2 features still separate the tradition from its Western cousin. It is sidereal rather than tropical, measured against the fixed stars, not the seasonal equinox, so signs drift roughly 24 degrees from Western dates, and it layers the 12 Rasi signs with the older 27 nakshatras, each governed by a presiding deity and used for muhurta, electional timing of weddings, journeys, and rites. So here's reading the wheel, and it's an original diagram, the Razi wheel with Navagraha ring, not a reproduction of any historical chart. So an original schematic of the 12 Razi signs, each marked with an invented geometric sea glyph standing in for its traditional character, arranged around a 9-point Navagraha ring representing the sun, moon, 5 visible planets, and the 2 lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu, that Indian astrology treats as full quote-unquote planets. And we see this right here. We have Makara, Kumbha, I'm not going in any specific order here, Mina, Mesa, Vrishrabha, Mithuna, Karka, Simha, Kanya, Tula, Versika, and Danu. Don't come for me in the comments, I'm not going in any exact order here, just showing you the diagram and what's placed. Next is Babylonian astrology. So, the Mesopotamian root system, omens, the ziggurat, sky, and the birth of the zodiac. So Babylonian astrology descends from a much older Mesopotamian practice of celestial divination, reading planetary and weather omens as messages from the gods to the king, not the common person. Compilations such as the Enuma Inu Enlil catalog thousands of omens. If Venus disappears in the west and stays away 3 days, tied to state affairs, harvest, and war. The true innovation came late in the Neo-Babylonian and Achaemenid periods. Astronomer priests divided the ecliptic into 12 equal 30-degree segments, named for constellations along that band, the world's first zodiac in a technical sense. The standardization made it possible for the first time to compute a precise planetary position for any birth date. The earliest personal horoscope texts date to around 410 BCE. Around the 7th century BCE, scribes compiled Mul-Epin, a 2-tablet star catalog dividing the sky into 3 paths of Anu, Enlil, and Ea, and listing the rising and setting of stars used for a lunisolar calendar. Babylon's mathematical astronomy, arithmetic methods for predicting eclipses and planetary stations without physical models of the cosmos, passed westward to Greek astronomers and eastward along trade routes, becoming the technical bedrock beneath Hellenistic, Indian, and later Arabic astrology alike. This is the ecliptic path of Anu, Enlil, and Ea. 12 equals Zigpu segments after 7th century BCE, Babylonian reckoning. Original schematic evoking the ecliptic path concept and cuneiform style tally wedges marking 12 zodiacal segments, not a copy of any museum tablet. Alrighty. On to Chinese astrology. Xingjiao in the cosmology of heaven, earth, and the 5 phases. So Chinese astrology developed independently of the... Chinese astrology developed each animal... Oh my gosh, I'm tweaking. Each Chinese... Oh my gosh, I'm speaking over myself. Mercury and Pisces. I'm so sorry, guys. Chinese astrology, it developed independently of the Mesopotamian Hellenistic line, rooted instead in Shang and Zhou dynasty divination, oracle bone reading, and in the cosmological framework of yin-yang and the 5 phases, wood, fire, earth, metal, water, articulated during the warring states period. Each animal year is further combined with one of the 5 phases in a yin or yang polarity, producing a 60-year Jaizi sexagenary cycle used for both calendars and fortune telling, a system entirely distinct from the tropical zodiac, organized by cyclical time rather than by the sun's position against fixed constellations. The familiar 12-animal cycle, birth likeness, is first attested in something close to its modern form during the Han Dynasty, linked to a 12-year Jupiter cycle used to track the year star across its roughly 12-year orbit. Chinese astrology also developed purple star astrology, a more technical chart-based system dating to the Song Dynasty that maps 14 major stars into 12 palaces, a structural cousin to horoscopic astrology but built on wholly indigenous star lore. Reading this wheel, we have the original diagram, the 12-animal Xingjiao wheel with 5-phase color coding. 12 original minimalist line glyphs, not tracings of any existing zodiac art, stand for the 12 animals, tinted by their associated 5-phase element with a simplified yin-yang motif at the center, representing the polarity that alternates year to year. And again, in no specific order, we got the dog, pig, rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, and rooster. Shout out, y'all. You're the rooster. Alright. Arabian and Islamic astrology. The Abbasid synthesis of Greek, Persian, and Indian sky science. Astrology entered the Arabic-speaking world through the great 8th-9th century translation movement centered on Baghdad's House of Wisdom, where Sanskrit Siddhantas, Pahlavi, Sasanian handbooks, and Greek works of Ptolemy and Dorotheus were rendered into Arabic and cross-compared. A genuinely comparative cosmopolitan science almost without precedent. Islamic astrologers refined mathematical astronomy to serve both astrology and religious timekeeping. The direction of prayer, the lunar calendar, producing precision instruments, above all, the astrolabe, that let a practitioner calculate planetary altitudes and the ascendant sign for a given moment in latitude without modern computation. Abu Mashar al-Balkhi, the most influential astrologer of the era, synthesized these strands in his Kitab al-Madkhal al-Kabir, Great Introduction to Astrology, which later reached medieval Europe in Latin translation and shaped Western astrology for centuries. The period also introduced technical refinements still used today. The doctrine of planetary dignities, elaborate systems of horary, and electional astrology choosing auspicious moments, and historical mundane astrology using the great conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn to forecast the rise and fall of dynasties. Reading the instrument. And here's an original schematic astrolabe diagram illustrating Reed, zodiac ring, and Elidade. An original invented astrolabe style diagram, concentric altitude circles, a zodiac ring, an 8-point star rate with fictitious Arabic style star names, and a sighting Elidade illustrating the instrument's logic, rather than copying any surviving historical astrolabe. And postmodern astrology. From horoscope columns to archetypal psychology, astrology reinvented for the individual self. So, 20th century astrology broke from its predictive fate-bound past under the influence of depth psychology. Carl Jung's theories of archetypes and synchronicity gave astrologers a new vocabulary. Planets and signs as symbolic maps of the psyche rather than literal causal forces. Dane Woodard's The Astrology of Personality crystallizes into humanistic astrology oriented towards self-understanding and growth rather than fortune-telling. Since the 1970s, the field has fragmented further into competing schools, evolutionary and narrative astrology framing charts as soul growth stories, statistically minded researchers like the controversial Gauquelin studies attempting empirical tests, feminist and queer reworkings of gender planetary symbolism, and a thriving skeptical scientific critique that treats astrology as a case study in pseudoscience and confirmation bias. Mass media accelerated a parallel, more populist trend. The modern Sunshine newspaper column, popularized from the 1930s onward, compressed the entire system into 12 broad personality types, astrology's most widely consumed but least technically rich form. Most recently, smartphone apps and social media have driven a further transformation. Algorithmically generated, hyper-personalized charts delivered as daily content, folding astrology's oldest instinct, reading the sky for meaning, into thoroughly modern platforms of data and attention. Original concept network diagram, mapping the eclectic influences feeding contemporary postmodern astrology. And again, in no specific order here, it all leads back to classical inheritance, okay? We start with skeptical critique, and we see evolutionary narrative astrology, New Age and self-help, mass media and horoscope columns, statistical testing, depth psychology, and Jungian archetypes. Modern astrology no longer asks only what will happen, it asks who am I borrowing the sky as a mirror rather than a decree. And because we're already finished up here, I am going to go ahead and go into the other Advanced Astrology Origins PDF I crafted with the help of a different AI agent, not Claude Anthropic. But to finish up this one, we see at a glance 5 traditions compared. Tradition, core organizing idea, emblematic text tool, and proc state. So Hindu, Jyotisa, Babylonian, Chinese, Arabian, Islamic, and postmodern. All right. Now, I want to go into the second one I made here. I used Grok for this one, Origins of the Stars, A Journey Through the Ancient and Postmodern, using the same cores, Vedic, Babylonian, Chinese, Arabian, postmodern astrology. And I really like how this is formatted as well, because it's very colorful. We also get that timeline from Babylonian omens to Vedic Jyotisha to Chinese zodiac, Arabian synthesis, and modern and postmodern. So for Vedic astrology, we usually talk about the sidereal zodiac, nakshatras, and dashas and yogas. Babylonian, we talk about celestial omens, zodiac birth, astronomical diaries. Chinese, the 12 animals, 5 elements, and lunar mansions. Arabian, house systems, fixed stars, translation, legacy. And postmodern, psychological, co-creative, and pluralist. So specifically with Hinduistic and Vedic astrology, science of light, we see the 27 nakshatras and the lunar mansions are very, very important. Okay? So the earliest layers of Indian astral science appear in the Rig Veda and Atharva Veda. These texts record careful observation of the moon's path through 27 or 28 lunar mansions called nakshatras, used primarily to determine auspicious times for Vedic rituals. And the Vedanga Jyotisha, attributed to the sage Lagada, this is the oldest surviving systematic treatise. It focuses on calendrical calculation rather than personal horoscopy, establishing the mathematical foundation later used by predictive astrology. In the early centuries of the Common Era, Greek Yavana horoscopic techniques arrived. The Yavana Jataka of Spu Shitavija, you guys can bully me in the comments, is the earliest Sanskrit text to present a full 12 sign, zodiac, and planetary aspects. Indian scholars rapidly absorbed and transformed these ideas. By the time of Varahamihira, 6th century, and the compilation of the Priyat Parasara or Sashtra, a uniquely Indian system had emerged. The sidereal Narayana zodiac, elaborate dasha, planetary period systems, yogas, and the central role of the moon and nakshatras. Later, Persian, Arabic, Tajika techniques were also integrated. In Babylonian astrology, it's the cradle of celestial omens in the zodiac. So, Babylonian celestial divination begins in the early 2nd millennium BCE. Royal scholars interpreted eclipses, planetary appearances, and meteorological events as messages from the gods concerning the fate of the king and the land. The Great Omen series, EAE, when the gods Anu and Enlil eventually comprised thousands of conditional statements. By the 5th century BCE, the 12 equal signs of the zodiac had been standardized. This mathematical division of the ecliptic made possible the first true natal horoscopes, small cuneiform tablets that record planetary positions at the moment of an individual's birth. Roughly 30 such horoscopes survive, dating from the late 5th to the 1st century BCE. Same scholarly culture produced the astronomical diaries, continuous records of sky and earth phenomena kept for centuries. Goal year texts and planetary period tables allowed accurate prediction of celestial events. And this fusion of rigorous observation with divinatory interpretation is the foundational legacy that later flowed into Greek, Indian, Islamic astrology. Chinese astrology. So Chinese celestial science developed largely independently of Mesopotamian traditions. Neolithic sites already show careful orientation of structures to cardinal directions. By the late Zhou and Warring States periods, the 12 earthly branches and their animal associations were in use. They became firmly codified during the Han Dynasty. Each year in a 12-year cycle is linked to an animal whose perceived character colors the fortunes of those born under it. This animal cycle intersects with the 5 phases wuxing: wood, fire, earth, metal, water, producing a 60-year sexagenary cycle of unique element-animal combinations. The system is primarily calendrical and correlative rather than based on planetary positions at birth. Chinese astronomers divided the sky into 28 lunar mansions, U. In classical field allocation astrology, these segments were correlated with terrestrial regions, allowing celestial events to be read as omens for specific states or provinces. The emphasis remained on harmony between heaven, earth, and human society. Arabian Islamic astrology. After the rise of Islam, the need to determine prayer times, the Qibla, and the lunar calendar gave powerful religious impetus to astronomy. In 8th century Baghdad, the Abbasid caliphs established libraries and observatories that became the world's leading centers of celestial science. Scholars translated Greek Ptolemy's Almagest and Tetrabiblos, Persian, Indian, and Syriac works into Arabic. They did not merely preserve knowledge, they corrected planetary tables, refined trigonometric methods, and developed the first complete systems of house division still used in Western astrology today. Indian lunar mansions, Manazil, were integrated into the Enwa system. Extensive catalogs of fixed stars with Arabic names, many still used in modern astronomy, were compiled. Astrologers such as Abu Mashar or Abu Masar produced systematic introductions that later shaped medieval European practice. When Latin translators in 12th century Spain and in Sicily rendered Arabic texts into Latin, they transmitted not only ancient Greek learning, but also centuries of Islamic refinement. Without this bridge, much of classical astrology would have been lost to the Latin West. All right. Postmodern astrology. And this is different because as we see in the center, this time it's the self. Completely the self in the center, symbol, psyche, and cosmos, all surrounding that. And humanistic, evolutionary, participatory, archetypal, and psychological on the outside. From fate to co-creation. In the early 20th century, Alan Leo and later Dane Rudar shifted astrology away from rigid prediction toward character analysis and personal growth. Influenced by theosophy, Jungian psychology, and humanistic psychology, modern astrology treated the birth chart as a map of the psyche rather than a decree of fate. From the late 20th century onward, practitioners began questioning universal meta-narratives. Postmodern astrology emphasizes pluralism, cultural context, and the co-creative relationship between the individual and the cosmos. Techniques from Hellenistic, Vedic, and traditional Western sources are selectively recombined. Certainty is replaced by probabilistic, symbolic, and dialogical interpretation. Today one finds evolutionary astrology, soul growth across lifetimes, archetypal astrology, planetary patterns as collective mythic forces, post-colonial and queer-informed readings that interrogate power and identity, and a renewed interest in traditional techniques filtered through a non-deterministic lens. The chart is no longer a verdict, but a living conversation. Stars remain the same, the stories we tell about them continue to evolve. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one teaching more advanced astrology. Piscean out.